Welcome to this corporate overview and scrutiny meeting on Tuesday, the 20th of January 2026. It's now 7 o'clock, so we'll start the meeting. Before we do, I'd just like to remind everybody that tonight's meeting is being live streamed and recorded for publication on the Council's website. Item 1 on the agenda is to receive apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Cecil, who's been substituted by Councillor Shinnick, and apologies from Councillor Fletcher. Are there any other apologies? Thank you. So item 2 on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of December 2025 as outlined in the agenda. Are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? No? Okay, can we take them as approved then? Thank you, the minutes are approved. Item 3, are there any declarations of interest? No, there's no declarations of interest, thank you. Item 4 concerns unplanned scrutiny items and members' right of reference. I've not been notified of any such items. So we move on to item 5, which is at pages 11 to 16 of the agenda, and that's a briefing note on smarter commissioning deep dive briefing. And can I ask Shelley Prince to present that item? No? Councillor Morris-Cook? Councillor Morris-Cook. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I just want to bring members' attention to 1.7. There is a query on the figures that should be, we've asked for the deletion of that because the figures were correct on that, or it was a bit confusing, and that 1.8 are actually net figures and do include costs required for the ongoing revenue and capital costs associated to that delivery. Right. So, I want to provide an update on why we are strengthening our approach to commissioning and procurement and how this aligns with the budget and improvement plan and what the new operating model means for services along with where we currently are. So historically, commissioning and procurement sat within individual directorates. That local ownership helped services respond quickly to their users, but it also leads to inconsistent practice, varying levels of assurance, and often missed opportunities to secure savings across the council's wider contract portfolio. The refreshed corporate and improvement plan sets out clear expectations for a one council approach with transparency, accountability and best value at its core. As members will be aware, the financial challenge is significant. The medium-term financial strategy requires around £41 million of savings over the next 3 years, including 13.65 in 26-27 to meet our legal duty to set a balanced budget. Smarter commissioning is one of the transformation programmes which will be contributing to these savings, sitting alongside the other enabling functions across the organisation. Services have already achieved an amount and teams have provided visibility now of contracts, strengthening placement controls, they're engaged the market more proactively and have resolved some long-standing legacy issues. That progress shows the capability is within our workforce. However, working individually will only take us so far. To capture savings at scale, reduce duplication, and embed consistent standards across the council, we need a strategic, coordinated model backed by shared intelligence and a consolidated view of spend. This is reinforced not only by our corporate plan, but by the external oversight requirements we operate under. Commissioning is currently committed to deliver £6.4 million over the next 3 years. These savings rely on stronger commissioning, market engagement, and a demand management, capabilities that the new model is specifically designed to support. This is only just the start. These figures are net, not gross, and is currently what we're committed to. Clearly, there's work to be done in order to unlock those additional savings for the next 2 years. The operating model is based on a hub and spoke structure. The hub is a strategic centre, setting its commissioning and procurement policy, leads the market intelligence and needs assessments, manages the strategic suppliers and oversees high-value or complex procurements, and runs corporate governance and assurance. It provides the shared standards and strategic capacity required for this one council approach. The spokes are based within the directorates, and they remain responsible for the operational commissioning, carrying out service level needs assessments, writing specs, managing the frontline provider relationships, and overseeing day-to-day contract management. This ensures we retain the local expertise where it adds the most value, but within a consistent strategic framework that is set by the hub. The programme reinforces the corporate and improvement plan's focus on an enabling council, stronger governance, measurable outcomes for residents. Progress is monitored through the corporate performance and assurance framework so that members of overview and scrutiny can track delivery on time. The implementation is phased. The first stage establishes the hub's core functions, confirms governance, and the RASCI. And if you want to know what RASCI is, it's a form of governance. And the R is responsible person, the A is the accountable person, the S is the supporting, C is consulted, and I is the informed. And it's quite a common way of governance on contracts. This publishes the procurement pipeline and embeds the strategic contract management framework. At the same time, directorate spokes continue improving the practice and delivering the savings already identified in the MTFS. Finally, risks, such as delivery slippage, market capacity, data quality, and compliance, are managed through a single commissioning framework, clear thresholds for the strategic oversight, standardised templates and playbooks, and a savings tracker that links the delivery plans directly to budget lines. Chair, this really concludes the briefing. I'm happy to take questions from members.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members? Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Morris-Cook, for your the briefing note. How can we be assured this model oversight isn't weakening individual directorate ownership and accountability?
That's a really good question. So if we go back to the hub and spoke, okay, so if you imagine, oh, I don't know, this is the hub, okay, and that's, say, adults, scrutiny, that's adult directory, that's children, and my pen is place. This is the accountable body that sets the policy and says this is how we do it, and we do it one way. However, adults have got the expertise. They know what the demand is looking like. They know what trends are like. They know what the market is doing. So they feed that information back to the hub. So there's a constant overview from the hub as to what they're doing. Because you can't suddenly have place talking to children's, they have to go through the hub so that you're having clear communication, clear accountability. And actually the hub is holding the directorates to account by the spokes. So they're looking at the account management, they're looking, you know, there's no like, oh, well, we haven't really delivered that this week and that contract's not. It's absolutely managed centrally. Does that sort of perfect?
Councillor Holloway.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thanks for your report, Councillor. The appendix on page 16 divided into 4 quarters, governance and assurance. And I'm jumping on the racy bandwagon here in regard to consultative. In regard to consultative. At what point, when procurement or commissioning decisions are made at the newly established hub, are those decisions made here without prejudice to the decision makers with our officers and the cabinet, and of course the contractual sensibility of what is being negotiated? At what point of those decisions would that come to this committee? What mechanism? Without prejudicing the negotiations that you have to do on behalf of our residents, in order for the accountability and transparency of going forward, when would that come to this particular committee now it's being centralised?
If I'm honest, I mean, currently, procurement and different procurement of contracts doesn't come to an individual scrutiny, but the policy could come. We could look at how we're doing it, and also when you are, and it's something that we have agreed to do, to be held accountable by corporate scrutiny, we would be reporting back on the savings and the progress we've made. But we wouldn't be going into, and I mean, feel free, guys, to sort of jump in if I'm not heading in the right way. We wouldn't be here to talk about individual contracts and the current procurement, but we would be here to talk about how we're doing it, what policy changes we might do, and how we're progressing with the teams, because we have committed to doing that on a regular basis. Did you want to jump in?
So just to assure you all, we understand that there is this transparency agenda. We have to publish our procurement pipelines. There is increased requirements of transparency and also requirements on council members under the Procurement Act 23. So once the new governance arrangements have been finalised with the new operating model for not just the hub but also the spoke, the wider council's commissioning and procurement framework, we will bring that back here so that you are aware of what that responsibilities lie and who they lie with, and those delegations. We are working with colleagues to look at the governance that supports the delivery of this model and how that fits with others.
Much more eloquently put than I said.
Does that answer your question? Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, I think this is kind of related to the previous question, but I was wondering if you could let us know what mechanisms this new hub would have. You mentioned that they'll be holding directorates to account in the event that something goes awry or something isn't going the way it should be. What authority, what mechanisms does this hub have when holding directorates to account to nudge them back into the right direction?
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for your question. We know that centralisation of services, in the same way we've done in different parts of the organisation, as this committee is aware of, changes the relationship between enabling services and those who are delivering services on the ground. We have a view as an enabling council, and we have a view as a group of senior officers and members that should be done on the basis of positive working relationships, and we found that to be extremely helpful when we centralise, for example, intelligence and insights, and the relationships between that service and the delivery services are successful. I think, as with any situation within corporate governance where there is a disagreement or where work needs to be done to improve performance, we have clear hierarchical structures where issues are escalated through SLT. We are proposing and considering options for these structures, which will of course come to this committee, but we are considering options where one member of SLT has oversight of commissioning and procurement functions, while other members of SLT have oversight of the delivery of services. And if there were issues, we would escalate those issues to senior staff for discussions at the senior management team, as you would expect.
Come back on that as well. Each of the cabinet have been assigned as part of one of the transformation projects. So strategic commissioning sits with me. Plus, the portfolio holders will be something they'll be talking with directorates, because I understand what you're saying, because it's a massive change, and if you look at the change curve, sometimes you can take people with you, sometimes you can't. So it's about how we manage that relationships. And as we've said, there is clear hierarchical for decision making.
Councillor Panjala.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. Thank you, Councillor Morris Cook. So, regarding this new hub bringing into the plan, so that's almost like it up to 3 years, 600 millions budget is going to allocate. So that budget is coming from where, and is it going to be additional cost for the Thurrock Council?
So it's not a real hub, it's like a virtual hub. So we're not building anything or doing anything, it is like a virtual, but it's how we centralise everything. And as we're saying, there are costs associated with different things, as there is with procurement. You know, clearly there is some training that needs to be done, but when you see the figures like the 6.4, that is net of anything that is going to be offset. It's not a gross figure. So the 4.5 million or 4.3 million, I think it is, that's been committed for this year is net of any costs.
Thank you. And like you mentioned that this one is going to work up to 3 years. So after 3 years, what will happen?
Go poof bang. No. So after 3 years, obviously we will be within a new authority, as Thurrock won't exist. But what we're looking at is that we will be leading in the way of how procurement is managed in local authority. This is really quite groundbreaking. I mean, this type of approach is done in the private sector on how procurement is managed. And we are looking at making sure that we have firm voices at the table to say, you know, Thurrock is leading on this, and, you know, whoever we're with, hopefully bringing them along on the journey too. Because we will be able to have shown clearly after 3 years the success of what we've done and how we've done it. So it will be very clear on how we can absolutely copy that over and other authorities can steal with pride.
Yep, sure.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll just add to what Councillor Morris Cook has said, that we know the landscape of commissioning and procurement is becoming much more regional at pace. That's true because of local government reorganisation, but that's just true also because of the way services are changing. So we know that there are changes perhaps coming in children's. We know that our relationship on procurement and commissioning with health colleagues is going to change with the changes in the health service about ICBs. And so alongside this work, which will change the way we work as a council, kind of within these walls, you should also be assured that we're working closely with colleagues across Greater Essex to see what our colleagues are doing, both in their local authorities that we could be partners with in LGR, but also what they're doing on a regional basis and where we can enter into regional agreements to provide savings and to provide better value for Thurrock residents in the intervening period.
Okay, yeah, before I bring Councillor Green in, I've just got a couple of... No? Okay. Did somebody indicate? No? No, okay. Just a couple of questions from me then. I think, Patrick, you mentioned cross-working with other local authorities. I'm just interested to know, is this particular model, it might not be a question for you, it might be a question for Councillor Morris Cook, is this kind of model something that other local authorities utilise, and are we looking specifically at local authorities that have it so that we learn best practice?
Without wishing to embarrass a colleague who is here at the committee this evening, one of the reasons that Shelley's come on board to work with us is that she's implemented a similar model in a local authority. So I'll allow Shelley to pick up there if you don't mind, Chair.
You can probably answer my two questions in one then. My other question is, I mean, this is quite, it's quite a bold move. There's a lot riding on it. There needs to be a lot of expertise, obviously, underpinning the hub to make it work. What confidence or what assurances can you give that we've got that expertise here to make it work?
So in relation to, thank you, Chair. In relation to the hub and spoke model, this is actually, it's bold here, but it's a well-established model that is being implemented in various forms in different local authorities. And it's not a one-size-fits-all. So I just want to assure members around the table, it's not a one-size-fits-all. The hub and spoke model can look different. Although it's, the premise, the principles are the same, there are permutations to how that looks, different ways of assigning hubs and spokes. But it is an established model that has been delivered in multiple local authorities. And it depends on the environment and the requirements that are needed for local authorities as to how far you take the hub and spoke model. In Thurrock, it is right and proper to do so, I believe, with my background, because of the LGR on the horizon and how we are able to deliver savings now, but also prepare and make ourselves fit for the future that we know is coming, and how we put ourselves in the best place to be able to spearhead and lead whatever that new footprint will be beyond 27-28. So that's the first part. In relation to the expertise that's required, commissioning and procurement, as my colleague mentioned, Patrick mentioned, is very much a focus nationally, and therefore the expertise, there is a renewed focus on upskilling people and reminding people about the importance of commissioning and procurement in the round. We know that health is also looking at strategic commissioning, and that can look different to how we deliver in councils, because we have different statutory requirements and duties and the transparency agenda that we have to deliver against versus a very different model in health. But there are opportunities for us to learn from those skills and abilities that health have and how we use that here. So we are also looking in, while establishing a new model, about undertaking a skills audit, so that we can put in place that learning and development offer that may be required to upskill staff to be able to deliver what we need in Thurrock, but also what is required for the future. Commissioning and procurement, and I use that as in the round, is a specialism, and therefore we need to upskill our staff to be able to deliver that. It is constant learning.
Thank you for that answer. It
Very
certainly gives me some confidence. As Councillor Morris-Cook, did you want to come in with anything
No,
else?
I just think it's really exciting, and it is definite, you know, and it's probably been a long time coming. You know, as I say, this is something that happens in private industry. You know, they are skilled, absolute skilled negotiators that will work on commissioning. And it's something that we haven't really, we rely on knowledge rather than the skill to negotiate that extra. And, you know, if you look at some of the contracts that we're currently dealing with, when we get some social responsibility, it's very varied on how that's managed across the authority. Some, you know, with some directorates will be delivering, but what we haven't done is put a commercial value on that, because anything you do, there's a commercial value to it. As we say, if you can't put a value on it, it's not worth doing. So there's a lot that we can actually build on with that, which I think is really helpful. Plus, when we've looked at having this really streamlined, it will help deliver contracts in a much more timely manner. And if you're saving time, you're naturally saving money, and you're saving resource. So, you know, it's absolutely, it's like you plan, do, check and act, and it's going to be that continuous improvement wheel that you're going to see as time goes on will absolutely gather pace. So I just think it's, you know, and to be honest, I'm more than happy to come back here because I think it's quite an exciting thing to talk about.
Thank you. Are there any final questions or comments? Nope. Thank you. I just end by saying I completely agree. I think it is really exciting. It is long overdue, and I think not only is the potential here to make savings, I think better negotiated contracts mean better services for residents ultimately at the end. So I'm sure this will come back to this committee and the next committee in the next municipal year as it evolves. So thank you. So we move on now to item 6, which is pages 17 to 92 of the agenda, and that's Q2 financial outturn. And I think that's Councillor Morris Cook again, please.
We're actually going to try and do the two together, if that makes sense, because we've got some slides, as Dawn said, that actually shows the sort of marriage between the two reports and how they affect each other. So I'm just going to, I'll do a quick introduction to both reports, and then we'll go to the slides, because it's probably, otherwise we'll be quite getting some repeated questions. It's probably easier to get one set of questions for the two, providing Chair and members that you're happy with that.
Members happy with that?
It probably makes much more sense.
Okay, yep, sure.
Okay, cool. So I will just do the quick introduction. So obviously, you know, we're looking at the financial position of Q2, and actually we are coming up to Q3. So the current figures, you know, they are where we are, but we will have updated figures. So we know that the approved budget is 240,656,000, comprising of 176,374 for operating costs. 64.282 million is for our treasury costs. To achieve a balanced budget, the council requires 72 million of exceptional financial support under capitalisation direction. The current forecast is showing an underspend from Q2 of 11.451 million, and it's broken down as follows. 0.787 million is an overspend in services, which has worsened by 1.9 million since Q1, and is mainly in adult social services and some in children's. There is a 9.38 million underspend in corporate and technical budgets, and we've had 2.857 million in additional funding, which has come from the packaging policy, which we now get to help support. So the plan is to allocate the underspend to rebuild some reserves and reduce the capitalisation requirement. The Transformation Infrastructure Fund, there was a forecast drawdown of 2.078 million, leaving a remaining balance of 10.33 million, which supports our transformation initiatives. So our savings delivery, obviously the savings target is 18.966 million, which does include the 0.766 carried forward from 24-25. The current delivery status is, it was showing at Q2 that 6%, 1.172 is unachievable. That is currently still the same. And we will be asking directorates, and they are looking at mitigation. 15%, 2.795 million was at risk. In Q3, that is now 0. So our at-risk amount has reduced, or disappeared actually. On track was 39%, which was 7.323. Now we are at 41%, and we are at 7.813. 32%, 6.114 million was delivered. We are now at 8,169 delivered, which is now at 43%, which is an improvement of 11%, and 8% was mitigated. So I think it was important, whilst you look at Q2, to just let you know where we are at Q3, so everyone isn't going, oh my God, that amount at risk. That has now 0. If we look at our reserves, our opening reserves were 80 million, of which 69.497 is ring-fenced, 11 million is in general reserves. The housing revenue account is remaining balanced, following a 0.447 million drawdown. Capital programme, we have had obviously a complete review of the capital programme, where we have looked at the little bits, odds, bits and bobs that were there that really needed to come out, because you shouldn't have anything on the capital programme that's less than £10,000. There were also a lot of projects that had been finished and the odd bits there. There was some slippage, and we've asked people, if it's not real, we take it away. And we also do currently have a capital board where if people want new projects, they need to present a clear business case to the board. And really, because of the position we're in as a council, unless it is legislative or health and safety, or it's going to deliver significant savings, we are not taking on new capital projects. The council tax rates remain strong, and obviously, you know, what we're actually getting back in, we remain one, you know, an authority to actually be envied across the piece because of our collection rates. Asset disposals and divestments. Our asset disposals are forecast at 16.73 million, and you know, we are looking to be well on track with that. And our divestments, most have been sold. We are just really having some of the tail end divestments, and actually there is a report on Cabinet tomorrow, which probably would give more detailed information about that. So, I mean, I think that's quite an overall of that, and I will give a very quick of the medium term, because I think we can spend more time on the slides and questions. I think it's probably easier. So we do have a 3-year medium-term financial strategy, which is updated annually. We are looking at the financial plans of the council over the medium term. The report that you've got there is the start of the refresh process, and the work does continue, and the final budget for 26-27 and the 3-year complete MTFS will be presented to Cabinet in February. The key points of work today is we have a savings target of 13.65 million for 26-27, and the report includes the proposals to achieve this target. The strategy of the savings is to protect the frontline services and totally transform the way the council does business and interacts with its residents. In light of in-year financial performance and the forecast in-year underspend, service growth requirements have been reviewed and revised down. However, this has not reduced the operating budget because we have had a number of unbudgeted pressures to fund, which we have reported to Cabinet previously. You know, one of them being the loss of income from the sale of the retail parades. Treasury costs are still under review, so there's no update figure in the MTFS, but it will be in place for February. And obviously we did have the indicative local government financial settlement was released, and it did include the outcomes of the fair funding review. The team are still working through some of the impact of the changes, and again, there will be a clear report that goes to Cabinet in February. A focus of the fair funding review has been the reallocation of funding based on the need and data sources, which does indicate that Thurrock is benefiting from this change, albeit slightly, due to the higher deprivation statistics. Any additional funding reduces the requirement for our exceptional financial support and will not be committed to new expenditure. Therefore, the draft budget and MTFS assumption is the current exceptional financial requirements, which will be reviewed following the settlement. And the council tax is presumed to be at 4.99%, which includes the 2% precept. So figures have been updated, including the pay award, and one in line with asset disposal and divestment strategies. So that's a basic introduction to the two reports, and Dawn has very kindly, because I think it's a lot easier for people to see it clearly and to understand it, has put some slides together to sort of talk about it.
Thank you, Councillor Morris-Cook. So what I've done here is I just thought it'd be quite helpful to try and look at the two together, because what I'm really conscious about is that last year we outturned it quite a significant underspend, and we explained what we were going to do about that. That underspend in some areas has continued into this year. So I just wanted to explain to you, and my slides are quite basic, but that's a bit my style, just trying to explain to you some of the underspend areas that we've got in this year, how we've addressed them in next year's budget. So you've just got confidence that we're just not carrying forward these underspends all the time. We are working through everything and making sure that how they're adjusted in the following year's budget. So if people want me to go through these slides, then maybe take any questions afterwards. Is that okay? So if you just cast your mind back to when we did the 24-25 outturn, we underspent quite significant at the end of the year. I think it was about 21 million. And we made a 13 million one-off contribution towards the debt support. And the rest of the money was put into, there was a small amount put into a reserve to cope with the rebasing of the business rates to help us manage that volatility. And the remainder was put in the transformation fund to fund that transformation. You've heard some from colleagues tonight to make sure that the council has adequate funding to make sure we can drive all that through. One of the biggest areas in the underspend area, and it came through at the last between Q3 and outturn, was around the service budgets. So the commitments that we made at the end of last year was really to have a really good review of the service budgets. Does budget need taking out? Does it need realigning, etc.? And so we've pretty much done most of that, and we know we can see in the savings that we've removed budgets from the adult services budget. We've been looking at public health. So you can see in this year's budget that the services are not showing a significant variance to budget, which is positive. And I think when you read the Q2 report, I have to say we are going to review these quarterly reports. They're too long, but we just haven't had quite the time. So we're going to get through this year and then review them next year to try and make them sharper. But I think when you read through the narrative of the Q2 report, it is saying we've been aligning, we've been reviewing, we've been budget aligning. So we have been moving a significant amount of budget around just to make sure that the budget is sitting where the agreed priorities are, the spending is taking place, so we can try and prevent some of them unders and overs next year. So that's just a little bit of context. So what I've got on the slides here is that when we look at Q2, we are at the moment forecasting, again, a significant underspend of 11.5, but the vast majority of that underspend now is falling in the corporate technical budgets. So what we talked about last year is our focus in 24-25 was really trying to get on top of all them directorate budgets, and we just didn't have the resources to put as much attention on the corporate and technical. This year, with the help of with David, is we've been going through all them corporate and technical budgets, our levies budgets, pay award budgets, contingencies, to make sure what have we got in the budget. Do we still need that budget? And if it doesn't, that needs to be removed from the budget to help, reduce our overall debt position. So as we can see, the report that you have in front of you, Councillor Maurice-Cook has already said £11.5 million overspend. The vast majority, underspend. The vast majority of that, is against our corporate and technical budgets, and is about additional grant funding that we got in after the budget was set. So we have no choice but to have that as an overspend. Now, I'll just briefly mention this additional funding before I go on. So this funding it's called the Provider Extended Responsibility Funding, and it's the money that we get from government. It's what organisations pay for packaging. Yeah, so they have to pay the very complicated way they have to pay, but there is a recognition that all this packaging, as a council, we have to pay the disposal costs of that. So the idea, obviously, we have to pay the recycling and collect it. So the idea is that providers are meant to be reducing their packaging, which means that it's less cost for us. So that funding we will start to see come down. So that's a little bit of a challenge for us that we can't put it in the budget. Now, for this current financial year, we had set our budget before this came out. So what we did with this provider responsibility is some of the money is being spent on initiatives in place, and that's been a subject of a separate cabinet report. And I think they're spending about £1 million. I think the funding is 3.5 for the current financial year. So the rest of the money, it's being classed as an underspend, but we have waste costs across the whole of the Place Directorate, so in theory it'll be funding that. Now, David and I have had conversation about how do we manage this going forward, because we will continue to get this funding, but it will start to decrease. So obviously as people put less packaging on, their tariffs that they have to pay. So I think what you will find is every year, we can't build this into our budget permanently because it will decrease and we don't know how much it's going to decrease. So, you know, we do foot that as a problem. So, but we will be transparent. This will come in every year. We will show it in the budget it comes in. Obviously, it will be funding the various waste costs across the service, and any spare will either be committed to more waste initiatives, which will be done through the cabinet process, or we'll make it very transparently in the reports. We'll transfer it to reserve. So you will sort of see that come forward as a bit of an underspend each year. So it is great that we underspend, but it's not good. We talked about this last time, didn't we? In that it's not good that you have great underspends. We need to make sure we get our budget set and we spend against them appropriately. So on the next slide, because the bulk of our underspend this year is in the corporate and technical, I just wanted to try and explain to you in simple terms, this is what's happened this year, but this is how we've sorted this in the draft budget to try and prevent it happening again. So overspends across the service directorates, that's got better. And we have done a significant amount of work about realigning those budgets and really getting a grip on them service budgets, making sure that grants are accounted for properly. So we've been checking all inflation, where services are spending money to, if people are underspending, taking it off them. So it's just really making sure that there is no capacity for services to just have some budget and use it elsewhere. It's all about what's been agreed in terms of priorities. I think what's happened in the past is grants have just gone in, etc. But now we're saying it's gone in. It's either funded specific funding, or we will hold it centrally to help out the council position. And as I say, a significant amount of work on realignment, which does make them reports a bit laborious to read because there's just lots of movement around, but next year that should be better. So in terms of the underspends across our top and technical budgets, now last year we had to include quite a significant amount of service directorate growth in the budgets because it wasn't there, you know, for our children's services, our adult services, our homelessness pressures. But what we did say is because we'd underspent significantly in 24-25, we will hold that growth back and we will only give it to services if they need it. So we did that, and so what we've got is this year we're holding back £4.1 million of growth, which is predominantly adults are not needing their growth because we're using better care funding, and adult place don't all need their growth. And what we've done across the MTFS, we've reviewed all those growth requirements and brought it down by 4 million. So we're not just leaving the growth as is, so we generate another underspend. This year we've got an unallocated pay award of 670,000. So when we've done our pay award over the MTFS, we've kept the percentage amount same, so 3.2%, but we've made sure that the budget that we've got included purely funds the 3.2%. We haven't got any unallocated in there. We've got some pan organisation savings that, now these are a cost pressure this year. Now these are the savings that are related to, they've been subsumed by the pan organisation savings in next year's budget, so we've just removed them. But we've done that through the budget process, so that we're not constantly saying we're not making these. It's just they've subsumed into those big pan organisation savings around business admin, internal customer and strategic commissioning. Next one, please, Kenna. We've got some unallocated budgets in this year's budget. Now, we knew about them because when we set this year's budget, we were quite clear what was happening around commissioning costs, etc. We held them centrally. We've not spent them this year, so we're being honest about that. And in next year's budget, we've got no unallocated lines. We've only got one revenue contingency, and we have used that unallocated budget to fund some of them budget pressures that Councillor Maurice Cook referred to, like the loss of the Natties contract, the loss of the retail parade income, and that was done through the budget, and there was a clear list of what we funded through them. And part of that funding as well was realigning some of our budget just to get rid of some of those, I call them budget gremlins, which is maybe not the right word, but it's some of those things in the budget that just need correcting to get us onto a better footing. So because obviously what we are very conscious of as we go into LGR, we really need our budget on a better footing. And then we also have, in our budget, we have one revenue contingency, and that's it was put into the budget in 24-25 as 8 million to help us if the savings weren't delivered. So that was by my predecessor. We reduced it significantly in this year's budget. It came down to £5 million because we didn't need that level of contingency. As Councillor Maurice Cook has explained, the council is doing well on its savings delivery, so we cannot hold that money in the budget. We've got an underspend this year against 3.1 million. Now, I've made the decision to leave this revenue budget in the MTFS for next year. And once again, we'll report that very transparently. If we come to the conclusion we don't need it, then we'll adjust it future years. But I suppose that's about the only revenue, the only sort of little bit of budget that I've got. If we suddenly had an influx of demand, it's the only budget that I've got to manage that with. So we still do have that contingency. We have 1.75 million it classed as a contingency for unforeseen items, and that's 1% of our operating budget. We've got 1.5 million set aside for LGR and Devo. It was 2 million last year, £500,000's been spent, so we're setting aside the difference. And there is £500,000 unallocated. Now, David and I have had many conversations, should we take that out of the budget? But what we do have in that budget, and and I'm probably the main culprit of this, is we have still got some unbudgeted overspend. So, for example, my finance budget is significantly overspending because I've got a lot of agency staff in. We are going through further recruitment rounds, but if I cannot solve that, I am going to be short on my, I haven't got enough money in my finance budget to fund the staff that I've got, so we might have to move some of that, but we're being transparent in the reporting. Now, Treasury costs. The Treasury costs are what fund the cost of our borrowing. So we've got capital financing charges, we've got MRP charges, we've got our Treasury advisors, etc. So that's around about £64 million for us. Now, at Q2, I'm just giving you a bit of a heads up. At Q2, we forecast them to budget because we were working through all the Treasury costs. It's quite a big calculation. It's all linked to inflows of capital receipts from our divestments, our fixed assets disposals, interest rate changes, and ultimately it's all linked into our capitalisation direction, which is how we calculate what exceptional financial support that we need. Q2, we were saying we're going to budget. Just to give you a heads up, at Q3, we will see an underspend against our Treasury costs because we've worked all those through. And once again, we've done a line-by-line review of them. Now, we will have one of the underspend is about £6 million. Now, that is linked to, and this is the investments that we are selling. Until we sell them, we get a return on them. And we also get some, I would say, ad hoc sums of money from our administrators. They hold some funding, they release that to us. What's actually impossible is to predict that at year end. So we've agreed with commissioners, and we've done this for 3 years now. We don't put a budget in for that. We have it as a cash windfall. The vast majority of our divestment programme has been completed, so we will see that pretty much tip off. And then we have been through all our other Treasury cost budgets, and we think that we have got about, there's a several £1 million underspend, and we're just doing a final double check. Do we need that next year? So it's just about giving you a bit of a heads up. And what we've done across that on the MTFS is when we've done our Treasury budgets for this year, we've reviewed them all across the MTFS. So they've all been reset, just to give you that assurance that we're not just rolling the same sum forward. We've reviewed them all over the 3 years. Next slide, Kenna. Now, we need what we acknowledge is moving forward. We need to get to a position. What we've done for the last few years with the scrutiny committees, and we've had separate scrutiny committees, is that we've brought to scrutiny predominantly the saving proposals. That is the biggest chunk of the budget, and it's probably the biggest chunk of the budget that's really good to have member insight, change, etc. But what we should be trying to do is we should be trying to bring to you the full budget in terms of, so when we've been working through our assumptions on growth and pay awards, so it's, you quite can scrutinise that and ask questions, etc. We've not really been able to do that before. Now, so what you'll see here is the final budget that will come to you to Cabinet will, there won't be time to have scrutiny look at that before it comes to Cabinet and Council, but you've already had the biggest element of that is the savings and the growth, which so your savings you've scrutinised and the growth have been through the cabinet process. The majority of the other adjustments are techie adjustments as a result of the settlement, but they will all be detailed in the report for you. Now, but moving forward, we've now, as a council, we've received a 3-year settlement. So we've received our settlement from government for the next 3 years. So what we need to do now is we need to put all our effort, because we've got the certainty of that funding. So we only got our settlement out this year on the 17th of December. So it literally came out just before Christmas. So we couldn't get that to the November Scrutiny Committee for you. And there has been on the settlement, there's been a fundamental reset of business rates and a fundamental reset of the needs formula for revenue. So having any form of estimate of what that meant for us was just impossible. We just couldn't have done it with any degree of accuracy. But what we need to do now is we need to put all our, because we've got this 3-year settlement now, we need to put all our efforts into doing an absolute full draft budget for December. So not just savings, a full draft budget, and then we can bring that to scrutiny in November, so scrutiny can have a scrutinise of the full budget and not just the saving proposals. So that's what we need to do this year. And just to give you some assurance, these quarterly mon reports are very long, and they're too long. But what we've done is we're just going to continue with that format for this year, but we are going to start looking at these for next year, because you know what we need to do is 12 to 20 pages of really good stuff, and get them more on an exception basis. So what's changed this quarter? But they have been helpful while David and colleagues have been working through all the detail. So that's really all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to questions. I think we've taken the presentation of the 2 items together, but if we can try and keep questions to item 6 first and then move on to item 7. So we have to flip through. I won't stick to that religiously, but to say flipping through the 2 reports. Are there any questions or comments on item 6? Yep. Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at, obviously, you mentioned the 11 million, a lot of that is off lots of grants and things rolled into it. It does look very scary on paper, especially when we had that conversation last year when we were talking about balancing, do we put this into reserves, do we try and reduce the capitalisation directive. I think just a couple of where we are then, if the impact of where we are with our underspend, but some of the savings, I'm a little worried that we keep, especially the corporate transformation programme, it's a core part and it slips. I mean, those that have actually gone into looking at it, they're unachievable on some of the digital transformation. I know we've talked about strategic commissioning this evening. That slipped as well to next year. I'm just mindful that I'm very concerned that is a really core part of the whole idea of our transformation journey, and we keep slipping. I'm not saying it's just this 25 budget. It happened in the 24 budget as well, and in the 23. It just seems that these are the key items, and we just can't get them quite right yet.
So I'll do the strategic commissioning because, yeah, I think we missed 300,000 last year. It's a completely different programme, and it's you know, if I'm honest, I think that was very ambitious to try and do that, doing the things the same way and hoping you're going to get a different outcome. Whereas this is, and I really don't want to marry the two together because this is completely different. And we've already seen some significant savings that are coming out of adults and children by operating slightly in this new way on how we're working as one and not in individual directorates. So I think we can give you some confidence that that is, you know, that 300,000, and it was, as I say, you're doing it the same way, expecting a different outcome is like crazy. But this is completely different. So I hope that sort of gives you, and I can't remember what you said before.
It was just more so just as the balance between the capitalisation directive and our underspend, and now just a bit more clarity on that 11 million.
So on the 11 million, I mean, we've put in the slides that the majority of that 11 million is sat within the corporate and technical budgets. And they are the ones that we hadn't reviewed, hadn't reviewed as much as the directorate budgets in 20, I'm gonna get my years, 24, 25. And I know when David arrived, one of the things I said, what I wanted David to do was really go through the corporate and technical budgets for me, because I have a feeling we've got stuff in there that we don't need. Now, so that those budgets, we there's a reason why we've underspent on some of them budgets. It's growth, etc. And we've explained how we've done it in the budget. And that is, so as Valerie explained on the strategic commissioning, that has now been replaced by a bigger saving. And some of the savings on that you mentioned on IT, like digital, they were just all savings. And I think you have to get to a point where you say they're just not going to be done. But actually, the council's now looking at its digital transformation. It's going to be supporting the admin review, the business admin review that's in the budget for next year. It's going to be supporting the internal customers. So you have to get to that point where you say, we just need to remove it now because we're wasting effort on it. Now, we will follow the same principle as we always do, irrelevant of the savings being either service specific or pan-organisation. If savings are not achievable, are not achieved, then we'll have to find alternatives. It's not a case of us not delivering our target. We will do, last year we did an early heads up of the savings tracker in February to make sure we were ready. Once we've got all these cabinet reports out, we'll do the same this year. Have we got any challenges? We do, the reason why we've got that one revenue contingency budget, so we have a budget if we struggle with delivery of some of those. We do have a limited budget, but really we have to deliver that value of saving. If there is a challenge with one of the savings, we'll have to find an alternative. It's what we've done this year. And when I wrote those 700 odd thousand savings out of the budget, and we also wrote the what was it, motoring traffic offences, the yellow box out of the budget as well, because that was just an old one, and you have to think they were that was really as a last resort. But it's very clear we've got just under £14 million worth of savings in the budget, and if there are challenges on delivering in the way that they've come through the budget process, then we'll have to be clear in our reporting that we need to find an alternative. It's really important we don't slip, because we need to now be focusing on the last 2 years of our MTFS targets.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, just a couple from me then. The Commissioner's comment refers specifically to capital budget slippage, and it's quite clear, it highlights that there are some reoccurring challenges, and it goes on to say that there needs to be a clear plan of action to address that. Could you just give us a flavour of, what we're doing to meet that specific recommendation and formulate a plan of action?
Yeah. If I'm not, you jump in. No. Feel free to jump in. It's a bit like what I was saying when we were looking at the capital programme in total, to look and really clean it up and tidy it up. We've also looked at slippage, because to be truthful, I might sound harsh, but having the word slippage there is not good enough, because it's too easy to write there. So we have actually got individual reasons why things have slipped, and we have there's a lot that we have gone through, and I can't remember the exact amount, so I apologise, that we actually removed from the capital programme because it was classed as slippage, and they were just never going to do it, because realistically you've got 2 years left. So it's no point in saying, well, it's going to go on, and we might do it. So we're taking it back, because obviously if you start doing that, you're going to need to borrow, which means you're going to be paying interest and different things. So we have gone through that very, very, and we are going to be doing the HRA in the same manner, because it's too easy, George, to write slippage. Sorry, Ben, you asked the question, to write slippage. And I have asked, and we have got reasons against every single one. And to be honest, when we sat on the board, if we didn't think it was good enough, it was like, gone.
Thank you. One of the things I noted reading through this was that time after time, whether it's an overspend or an underspend, so many of them are linked to staffing issues. And that seems to be one of the real overarching problems, is this inability to get, and I understand it stands to reason, there's always going to be some areas where there are problems with recruitment and we have to use agencies. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. It's particularly acute for Thurrock because of where we are, not only in terms of you know, a council that's being wound up, a council that isn't a particularly attractive place to work in right now, and the fact that we're so close to London. So I get that, you know, for a long, long time we've had problems with recruiting some staff. But nonetheless, all through this, there is underspend or overspend, one after the other, that is linked to staffing issues, staffing problems. It seems like the balance isn't right. What are we doing to address that one issue?
So it's a really good question. And, you know, if I look back when I took over the portfolio for HR back in May, one of the big problems that I had shouted from the rooftops from different directorates was the time taken to recruit. So it was absolutely ridiculous. We were actually losing good people because we could not get a contract out, we couldn't do this, we couldn't get people on board. So, you know, and it's a bit, you know, your sort of moment of truth with the council, and you think, my goodness, if they can't do that, what's it going to be like working there? So I can tell you now, we have worked very, very hard within the HR team with recruitment. We have now reduced that back down, and I think on average now it's about 28 days to actually, you know, to recruit somebody, which, you know, is pretty much industry standard if you're looking in a local authority. So that was one of the big problems, and what people were doing quite rightly, because they knew there was a huge problem in recruitment, they would just go and get an agency person or an interim because it's much easier than trying to recruit a full-time. That has spun on its head now. We have also seen that the cost of agency has reduced, but it's still within the cash envelope for staff costs. So we aren't actually exceeding that, but we can do better. So I'm hoping now we have got the recruitment process down and sorted, we will not start, and you know, you're quite right, there's always a case for agency when you're looking at trend, because you should, without being able to flex up or flex down 5% either way. If you've got to go and you're looking at trend, like obviously with place coming into the summer, they will look and they will know they'll need to go and get different people in to manage obviously grass cutting, weeds and goodness knows what. So you'll get extra staff in there, but you'll look at your trend as to where you need that. Hopefully we will start to see some real turnarounds, but because of where we are, you know, in effect, you know, the council's not going to be here in 2 years' time. While some people will find that quite an exciting opportunity to come and have that on their CV, others want more security. So it is a real balancing act. Plus, it's about getting the right person. You know, there's no point in recruiting someone just to recruit ahead. You know, and it's like with Dawn was saying, she has really struggled sometimes to get the right capability in for the right job. And whilst she's got some possibly interim or agency that are actually delivering really good work, why would you replace that with someone that is not to be tested and actually their CV probably isn't strong enough? So it is a real balancing act, but we have to make sure that overall the costs stay within the cash envelope. But I hope that's sort of...
It does, thank you. I've got some questions on some more specific things. I appreciate you can't always answer them here unless you've got some insight into the service. So perhaps if you can't give us an answer to this, we can have the answers circulated after the meeting. So on page 34, Grange Waters, there's a 0.121 million pound overspend there. I think that's really a failure to secure income rather than an overspend as such. Now, this was something specifically flagged at previous committees, and we've challenged the council's ability to commercially operate Grange Waters, and we received almost cast iron guarantee that that income would be realised. We've got, you know, the expertise to deliver it. That would suggest that's not the case. Could you just give us a bit more insight into what the problem is with Grange Waters and what we're doing to address that,
So
if you can?
there has been some delays in looking at the website and looking at the booking service, as well as some of the costs attributed to it. We did have to replace quite a bit of the equipment there that was needed. There is some other bits that I can go through that I can't actually just remember, but offhand. So I apologise, but I'm happy just to, at the end of the meeting, I'll just take some things and I'll come back to you on that detail.
Just quickly staying with Grange Waters, is it not, should we not perhaps return to the idea that that could be an asset for disposal? I know there's a lot of emotion attached to Grange Waters, but I personally think that that could be operated better by a private provider. Is there a case to sort of relook at that? I'm not saying we should, but should we look at that and consider whether it is an asset that could be disposed?
It's a good point. Yeah.
Thank you. I shall bring Councillor Green in. I'm just going to run through the questions I've got, and I'll bring you back. I suspect you've got something to say on that. Just a point of some clarification. On page 35, it mentions an incorrect underspend being reported against community safety, £800,000. I didn't quite understand what that was. Could you just give us some explanation around that as well, please?
It was just...
So that one is, this is just re-looking at the budgets and going through all the forecasting. We've got a new very good, I think I've explained to you before, as Councillor Morris Cook has explained, in finance we have gone through significant recruitment to get permanent members of staff. We have actually got a strategic finance business partner who covers place and corporate, and she's going through all the budget with a fine-tooth comb. So some of it, I'll be honest, I think it's just been sorted out, and now we're on a much better footing moving forward. Sorry.
It's probably, it was just that on the wrong line. So it's against one line and it should have been against another.
Thank you. And at page 42, page 42 to 43, there's mention of a quite considerable underachievement in income from commercial activity, including trade waste. I think I'm right in saying that increased revenue from those kind of services is one of the income streams we've built into the forthcoming budget. And I remember at the Budget Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Jones in particular focused on that and said he had a lack of confidence in the council being able to secure the income that we were projecting because of our history at delivering these kind of services. That kind of suggests that he had good cause to raise that. I mean, that is a really massive underachievement, yet we're relying on those services in next year's budget. Could I just have your perspective on that, please?
And I understand exactly where you're coming from. I do know that the place team have been working about trying to identify where it tipped over, because they had got some increased costs in fly tipping and things. So they're trying to understand where they haven't managed to achieve the trade waste, because there's a bit of good offer on that for people. And I do believe that there is somebody there that is now out to actually in fact tote for business. Which I don't think was in place before. But I'm sure that whilst, you know, I do apologise, but I haven't got an encyclopedia knowledge of this, but I just got a headline in my head that I remember. I can get the team to answer you with that, to give you some really more concrete reasons for that, rather than just what I've said.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
But I've really got an appreciation of it rather than an encyclopedic knowledge of it.
As I said when I started my questions, I fully understand you can't possibly, you know, have an in-depth knowledge of all of these, so we're quite happy to
try.
I've tried. Yeah, that'll be helpful. The only other thing I'd say to that is perhaps, Lucy, we can just refer this not formally refer, because I know we can't, but just perhaps send a note to Place ONS and invite them. This might be something that they might be interested in, because that is a, you know, £650,000 underachievement there. I think it's quite significant. I think they might want to just have a look at it and receive some reassurances. And then a final question for me. Again, you probably won't be able to answer this here, but well, yeah, you may do. In relation to the HRA, page 55, huge rise in repairs and maintenance, nearly a £1 million increase since Q1. Some of that is due to disrepair claims. I think, again, I don't know how much information you can give us here, but what are we doing to manage and contain that rising cost?
So just to really give you some confidence, obviously we have had the peer review. We've also, and I do need to say it correctly, Campbell and Tickell have been in, not Tickle as Dawn calls them, Tickell have been in, and we have got a clear action plan. Plus now the HRA sits under myself. We are going through it line by line. There is a weekly meeting, and we are looking at that as well as the capital HRA. So I can tell you that we are really focused on making sure that this is fit for purpose. We will be doing a year's budget on this, and then come to the end of the summer, you'll have a clear 30-year plan that will sit behind all of this.
Thank you. Bring in Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Just going back to Grange Waters, as it's been repeated on numerous occasions, there's been some issues there. No one wants to see it sold. They would like to keep it within the council. Is there an option we could actually bring it to a scrutiny committee and actually maybe have a working group, so we can actually maybe put our suggestions to it and actually work with the Cabinet to try and make it more profitable?
It's something we can definitely look at, Councillor Green.
Yeah, I think that's probably will be captured and given some consideration. I don't know whether that would be a working group for this committee or Place. I did ask a question. I think, can you have working groups that are formed of two committees? I've not had an answer on it yet, but I'm sure it's coming. But it's something we can look at, yeah. It's a good point. We'll certainly look into that and get an answer back for you. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, so the recommendations then are on pages 20 to 21, I think. Let me just check that. They're all to note, so I'm not going to read them out, but no doubt members have read them all in depth. Yeah, they're on pages 20 to 21. So are we happy just to take them on block and note them? Okay. So item 7, draft revenue budget. We've had the presentation on that. I don't think Councillor Morris-Cook or Dawn, you want to add anything more to this? No? No? Have we got any questions on this item? Okay, just a couple from me then, quick ones. Page 102 mentions a number of over 300 Band D properties, the reduction in Band D properties. Could you just, I mean, that's obviously slightly concerning because we have precious few Band D properties as it is in Thurrock. Could you just explain a bit more what that relates to and whether it's a trend that's likely to increase or something that we think will tailor off? Because it could obviously have quite serious implications if it's an upward trend.
So in the current financial year, when we express our council tax properties, we always do it in Band D equivalents. In the current financial year, we have seen that our council tax income is a little bit down because of an increase in the number of people claiming discounts, particularly single-person discounts. So obviously that does reduce our council tax base because we don't collect a full council tax from that property. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a massively worrying trend. And obviously we're very lucky here, we have strong collection rates, but we have seen a slight reduction, and it's predominantly around Band D properties, and that's reflected in our base for next year. So our council tax base, our MTFS assumed an increase in the council tax base that we liaise with planning on, But when we've reset our MTFS, we've had to revise those council tax base assumptions because we've got no evidence to say that, you know, the trend in single person discounts will disappear.
Okay, thank you. And a final question from me on page 111 in terms of non-domestic rates. I know that's only an estimation, but those figures show it's only slight, but nonetheless it is a decrease. It suggests that we're expecting a decrease in the amount of non-domestic rates that we're going to collect. Why is that?
So what we had this in the budget, now you will see this change at final budget. So in 25-26, we had some one-off income that came into the budget, hence why we had additionally in 25-26, but it was one-off, so we went back down to 57 million in across the MTFS. Now, we left that across the MTFS because we knew that under the settlement we were having, the business rates were going to be subject to a full reset in the indicative settlement. They have been subject to a full reset. So when our so you will see the specific numbers in the final budget, and basically what we've seen is our business rates have come down, and our sort of revenue support grants have gone up where money has been moved around. So in some ways it was the prudent thing to do last year because the full reset, but you will in the final budget you will see the specific NNDR rates that are aligned to what the settlement what the indicative settlement said, because David and his colleagues have been working that all through for us.
Thank you. So before we go to the recommendations, are there any final comments or questions? No. Okay, thank you. So item 7, the recommendations are on page 95. Again, I don't propose to read them all because they're only to note. Are we happy to note the report and the recommendations? Thank you very much. So we move on and take items 8, 9 and 10 together. That's the work programme, the action log and the recommendation tracker. And I'm just going to ask Lucy if there's anything we need to know about that. Any changes?
Thanks, Chair. No, there's no changes. As you can see, there's the work programme for the 5th of March meeting, which is our final meeting of the municipal year. Happy to take any comments, amendments, questions on either the work programme, the recommendations tracker or the action log. Thank you.
Do members have any questions or comments on those items? No? Okay, thank you. In that case, it is 17 minutes past 8, and I'd just like to thank everybody for attending, and I'll close the meeting. Thank you.